Hi folks, you're with Tastus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. Now in this chat I'd like to talk about the importing of work visa holders to come to the West to do various jobs, and in particular, and this is a big issue in the United States at the moment and elsewhere in the West, is the subcontinent or the Indian and to a lesser extent Pakistani alleged IT professionals and coders and programmers and so on that it's alleged we need here in the West. So I've always had I've been at the front line of this for some time. I've always had a problem with the claim that these people are needed. I don't believe they are, and I can't really find any practical reason or instance, certainly that I've seen or heard about directly, where these people are needed to be brought in. You know, they're not. But I've been looking at Indian media stories recently, and the Indians are, if anything, quite nationalist in support of their own people, or the upper classes in support of the Indian upper classes, I should say. And so they have an incredible sense of entitlement, that they're these morally superior Socratic beings that are entitled to go and get well-paying jobs in the West, and people in the West should be pleased and thankful and grateful, and even grovel a little bit in gratitude that these geniuses are deigning to come to the West and share their incredible skills with us. How they arrive at that view requires, you know, chutzpah that's just off the planet in its proportions. But nonetheless, let's run with that sort of narrative for the moment and to see where it goes. Now, when it became when the first idea of bringing Indian programmers and coders into the West first kicked off, I was vice president in an IT firm, and I ended up getting sort of saddled with the product development group, and the guy in charge of the product development group, he'd moved on, and the CEO was being, you know, super picky over getting a replacement. So I ended up absorbing that function and was dealing with it directly. So I then came into direct contact with some of these Indian programmers that have been brought in. Now, on a law of averages, some are going to be good, some are going to be bad, some are going to be maybe geniuses, some not. So there's going to be a mixed bag no matter where you go and what you look at. Geniuses are very rare, so you know from the get-go there aren't going to be many of them. But nonetheless, I found that they had a very different attitude to working, an incredibly different work ethic, and an idea of their concept of social structure and social organisation, and attitudes and cultures are very, very different from ours. And the idea of work and responsibility and these sort of things weren't something that they shared with the West. So there was a programmer, a coder who'd just been hired, and he allegedly had the very latest cutting edge skills and so on. And I don't know what the vetting process was, but he was clearly very patrician and from the Brahmin class or the upper classes of India. And India has sort of a caste system of multiple castes, and a bit like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. There's the caste at the apex, and then there's the people at the bottom. I think there's 4 or 5 castes off the top of my head, and the people at the bottom are the untouchables, that you walk over their dead bodies in the street and no one gives a shit. They're that low down on the caste, and they're considered as basically no more than vermin by the upper classes in effect in India. And it's an interesting, it's an eye-opening thing. So the upper classes see themselves as godlike and superior from the outset. So they come to the West only because of the money. They don't particularly want to come here. It's just that the money's here, so that's where they come. And without having a particularly high opinion of Westerners or the way we structure our society. So when I asked this guy, well, what have you done? What are you doing? He took rather, he took exception to that. He said, well, you're not of he didn't say this directly, but he inferred that I wasn't of a high enough social class to ask him what he was doing or question him. His social position was such that he doesn't get questioned or asked. and he'll tell me what he wants to tell me, and that's it. So I had to explain, no, that's not how it works. You get paid to do a job, and that's how it happens. And I need to know you're doing your job, and whether you like it or not, or disagree with it or not. Or I'm the guy in charge, and I'm going to ask you these questions. And they're going to ask you what you've done and ask you to at least indicate how far you're moving along with the project. Bear in mind, this is the product development section, so it's needed, progress is needed, and we need to see demonstrable progress moving towards the completion of a particular project for a certain product development. So there was a very clear framework, which this guy knew about. So he would sort of wave me off and fob me off with just sort of obfuscation and feigned sort of attitudes of he's offended by being asked, and someone as godlike as him shouldn't really have to be asked, and so on. So I let this go. I thought, well, I'll cut the guy some slack. He hasn't been in the country long. He's supposedly this great genius. Maybe he needs to find his feet. So I kind of let it go for a little bit, and would ask, every couple of days would ask what he's up to, and really get the same fob off and the same obfuscation. So I started to tighten up a bit on things and say, no, you're going to have to tell me what you're doing. You're going to have to show me you're making some sort of progress. And his annoyance with being questioned increased to the point where it became quite irrational. And he said it directly. Look, you're not of a high enough social class to question me. Well, I don't care what you think about that. You're going to show me, and that's how it works. And so I let it go for a couple of days. Then came and said, okay, I'm sitting down here. You need to cut some code. This is just the computer code here that he was allegedly an expert. You need to cut some code right in front of me right now. I can't, I'm busy. Look at all that. And he'd hold up papers and wave them. Look at all this work. No. Right now, you're going to show me. And he carried on, and this is an outrage. Oh, I don't have to take this. Oh, yeah, yes, you do. Yes, you do. If you don't get out of here right now, I'm going to leave. Well, look, there's the door, buddy. But Sai insisted he couldn't cut a line of code. He was just bullshit from top to bottom. He couldn't cut a single line of code to save his life in anything, let alone the computer code he was meant to be expert in. His whole CV was absolute bullshit. Now, you have to sort of, if you backtrack through it, he's from an upper class here. He's from an upper class family. You're meant to get a university degree. It's all part of the prestige, the social prestige of being in the socialite upper class. So he gets gifted a degree in computer science, a doctor of computer science, no less. But it's a gift. It's a social gift given to people at the apex of the social system. The guy didn't know a fucking thing. So he comes in, manages to bullshit his way, but he thinks that because of his social position in India, that he's beyond reproach or question, that he can bring that sort of social situation here to Australia, and of course, or the West, I guess. So, but he couldn't. So I had to say, look, buddy, I'm going to have to let you go. That's just how it is. And he blustered and carried on. No, you're out of here, buddy. And he didn't seem to think there was anything wrong. I mean, that he'd done a bullshit CV or anything. Well, we were, us people here in the West, we deserve to be lied to. So this is how it is. Now, I found this, he's one case there. That's not every case, of course, but I found this sort of attitude to be pretty much generic. And this is going back a few years. Maybe it's changed in the last 5 minutes. I don't know. But going back a few years, I found this sort of same thing. I found their productivity was very poor. Now, if they were cheap, they needed to be cheap because they weren't doing a very good job. So I just couldn't see how they were adding value to the company or the Western economies generally. They either had to be very, very cheap because they had to redo things so much and so often because they did such a poor job that you needed somebody cheap. But then they took much longer to do the work. So in the end, you're missing deadlines and so on. So I couldn't see the value. Now, that doesn't mean that Indians who maybe come to the West at a young age and go through the entire education system here, that doesn't mean they can't cut code or anything. But the ones that particularly the upper class ones who've got this, an incredible sense of Socratic entitlement, they come to the West, and they're next to useless. Even if that guy could have cut some code, the one I was talking about, he was still going to be next to useless because of his crummy attitude. This idea that he couldn't be questioned or asked or made accountable, or that he would even take responsibility for the work. So looking at the wider issue of bringing in guest workers, if they can't add value to the economy, if they can't provide skills that do not exist in the economy, then why bring them in? And these skills, coding skills, they do exist in the economy. They exist widely. So there's no value, in my view at least, in bringing these people in, be they on guest visas, temporary guest visas, and certainly not giving them green cards or citizenship or residency status. In my view, I think it's a complete waste of time, and I think it's giving Western money away, Western jobs, and future a future here to be able to have families and buy property. It's giving away from the local population, just giving it away for no particular reason. Now, some of the bigger multinationals, they use recruitment, hiring, sort of labour hire firms that are offshore, and they run the wage system and the payments and all that sort of through it, so they can do arbitrage on things like foreign exchange. They can build in management fees to the work visa holder, so they can put in all these backdoor fees that then can be used to reduce tax. And so they get a cheap worker, but they can charge them out at double using an offshore management fee structure. So so they get like double the tax write-off on this, but about half the price employee. Then that money then retained overseas can be fed back into the business through other outlets and other tentacles and so on. So a lot of it's just an international wage and exchange rate arbitrage scam. It's not to bring skills in at all. It's just a bullshit scam. So that's my take on it. But put your comments below. Those are my experiences. I've yet to find a guest worker coming in, or a temporary work visa holder, certainly from the subcontinent. I'm yet to find any of them that are adding value to anything. But again, put your view down at the bottom here in the comments, and then of course that's my personal view, and there will be exceptions and outliers all the time. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.